Hey everyone, and welcome back to Between Sundays with Pastor Rob Tucker here at Watkins United Methodist Church. A short space in the week where we reflect on Sunday's message and think about how faith shows up in our everyday lives. So, this past Sunday, we explored the powerful theme of fear and faith. I first kind of put out the introduction that the phrase faith over fear just doesn't do it for me because it ignores the reality in which fear plays in our lives. So we looked at two stories from the Gospel of Mark, Jesus calming the storm in Mark chapter 4, and two healings found in Mark chapter 5, the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years and Jairus' daughter who was brought back to life. At first glance, these might seem like separate stories, and I totally get that. One happens on the water in the middle of the storm, the other happens in the middle of a crowded town, but there's a thread connecting all of them: fear. The disciples are afraid for their lives in the storm. Jairus is afraid for his dying daughter, and the woman in the crowd is afraid too. Afraid to be seen, afraid of rejection, perhaps even afraid of hoping one more time. See, fear shows up everywhere inside of these stories, and maybe that's one of the reasons they feel so familiar. Because fear is a part of the human experience. We worry about the future and about people we love, and especially about things that we can't control. Sometimes we even think that faith is supposed to eliminate fear, that if we just believed enough, we wouldn't feel anxious or uncertain. But these stories suggest something different. Faith isn't the absence of fear. Faith is discovering that Jesus is present in the midst of it. See, in the storm story, the disciples panic while Jesus sleeps in the back of the boat. He's literally on a pillow. And when they wake him up, he speaks to the wind and the waves and says, "Peace, be still." And suddenly the storm quiets. And what's important is this: Jesus was in that boat the entire time. The disciples felt alone, but they were not. And the same thing happens in the other two stories. Jesus stops for the woman who reaches out in hope. He walks with Jairus into a house filled with grief. And again, we see the same pattern. Jesus shows up in the middle of fear, not just after it's gone. So here are a few questions and practices you might carry throughout this week. And like every week, I've said, hey, write these down, pause the podcast from wherever you're watching it, reflect on these questions. So the first one is, where are you experiencing a storm right now? Where are you experiencing a storm right now? It might be something external. Maybe it's a situation you're navigating, or it could be something internal, whether that's anxiety or uncertainty or fear about the future. But instead of trying to push that fear away, try acknowledging it honestly in prayer. Where are you experiencing a storm right now? Second question is this: where might Jesus already be present? Where might Jesus be present? Sometimes the presence of Christ shows up through a conversation or a friend or a moment of unexpected peace or a reminder that we are not facing things alone. So, as you name that storm, I want you to think, where might Jesus already be present in it? And the third one is, practice the breath prayer we talked about in worship. That when you feel stress rising this week, just take a moment to pause and take a deep breath in as slow as you can and pray silently, peace. And then breathe out slowly and pray, be still. Peace, be still. See, these were the words Jesus spoke to that storm, and sometimes repeating them can help calm the storms inside of us as well. Not because all of a sudden becomes easy for us, but because we remember who is in the boat with us. Peace, be still. Thank you for joining me for Between Sundays. And as you move throughout this week, may you notice the quiet presence of Jesus in your life. May you hear those same words spoken to you, over and over again. Peace, be still. Grace and peace, my friends. I'll see you next week.